Look, I want to start off with, I guess, an easy question just for the evening. I'm just interested to get your take on, I guess, ultimately, why is it important for companies to innovate and try and stay ahead of the times?
Definitely stay ahead of the game. It's there is choice out there. There's competition in the marketplace, and there are also really complex problems that need to be solved. And unless you try and create a culture where people can be, some of this is about having the right attitude towards problem solving. And the more we kind of institute a culture and really positive cultures within organisations where you can think laterally and you can be at ease to do that. So cultures where there isn't the blame, where there isn't the fear to do shit stuff. Because you have to do shit stuff. Shit stuff is great as far as I'm concerned because, one of those things will not be shit. It's about having a culture where you can do shit stuff really quickly and move it out the way and then try something else until you hit on something which is brilliant. And you need to do that because otherwise, you're not going to stay competitive. You're not going to create those unique eureka moments. Within a commercial environment, obviously that means that you can develop products and services that people will want, that meet their needs in a way that other people, haven't thought about dealing with those problems. For us, within the situation that we're in, there are complex social problems that we're looking to kind of deal with. And quite often, we live in a kind of society and institutions and a legacy. We're in a legacy society, and unless we have innovation, we're not going to, and the ability to have cultures where people look at things afresh and they cut through the kind of shit to figure out how do you solve homelessness? How do you get people into employment? How do you start to look at the fact that, the root cause of these things is mental health, and you can't just ask people to write CVs all the time unless you deal with those problems. You're never going to deal with the problems. So that's why innovation is so important. So we can get to the kind of, so we can have competitive companies and stuff, but so we can also have the kind of place that we all want to live in.
What I thought I'd do is ask the natural second question to any panel, which is introduce yourself as well. My
Great question. Did you think I know who they are?
Yeah, I realise I know these guys are cool, but if you want to, I guess, kind of take it in turns and just introduce yourself and just I suppose a quick bit about your backstory.
Shall I start first because I've got the mic? So I am head of delivery, practice lead for a company called BPDTS. We are the sole provider of digital technology services into the Department for Work and Pensions. I was previously at Stockport Council and responsible for their digital transformation programme. And I suppose my backstory is one, I was it's really interesting to hear the mustard tree story because I was an anti-poverty officer looking at inequalities and stuff. That was my kind of gig when I was in my 20s, what to sort out the world. Yeah. Didn't I do a great job? I think I went into tech. But that's kind of my backstory. But it's really important to me that we use digital and that we potentially just lose the word digital and we talk about how we're using all this great stuff that's around to kind of create the services and the products that people want.
Well, I think I kind of introduced myself earlier. So Paul Wilshaw from Barclays. I deal with innovation, platforms, and crazy stuff. Which is good. No money. So they don't let me near the money, which is I think a pretty good wise decision from Barclays. So my background is everything from a bit of architecture to user experience, customer experience, and then tech as well. So I worked on mobile banking, Barclays Ping It, and bringing the craziness and changing things up. Ooh.
Evening, everybody. My name's Dave Nicoll. I'm a principal consultant at Infinity Works here in Manchester. My backstory is I've come up the dev route over the years, so I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of some. I've kind of done my time in delivery and moved back into technology, which is where my passion is, helping everyone from startups to enterprise, I guess, to solve difficult technical problems. And more often than not, I find myself in a space where I'm being asked to innovate alongside a team. So I guess that's where I cut my stripes.
And I'm Kath Trotter. I'm a technology director at Moneysupermarket Group. I've spent my whole career running away from technology. I did a tech degree because I didn't get the grades to do the degree that I wanted to do. And my dad said it would be a good idea and it would get me a job. I hated every second of it. And I vowed I would never work in tech again. And now, almost 20 years on, I'm in a tech director role. I do spend a lot of my time talking about how I'm not a techie. And I know enough that if I'm being blagged, I kind of know I'm being blagged. But the real detailed technical stuff just isn't my bag at all. I'm all about people, building teams, making teams really productive, building slick experiences for customers, product engineering. So that's, I work in a techie world. I work with a lot of very techie people. I'm quite often the person making the joke that no one in the room gets, or that, bouncing around at the front of the room whilst they're all with their headphones on, kind of looking at me in a strange way. But I'm used to it now.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Seamless introductions. Okay, so moving on. I suppose, just a quick one. Is innovation just creativity that's followed through with? Dave.
Not quite. I wouldn't say so. No. So sorry. Can I just put this down? So I guess from my perspective, innovation is so much more. I mean, I see a lot. I see a lot of times where innovation is bandied about, but it's actually invention. Actually, innovation isn't invention. Innovation is iterating on existing process and improving that process. But more importantly, I think enabling that culture, whether it's within a startup or within an enterprise, to be able to innovate. And I think that goes right back to the roots of does your team have some autonomy? Can they take control of their own destiny? But more importantly, do you have the structure over the top? To be able to provide some sort of mission and vision for that team and allow them to head in a direction without constraining innovation.
So from a creative background, I can definitely say yes and no. So a lot of the times innovation ends in the creation process, because you get so far with like a prototype or a paper prototype that it just dies quite nicely because it's shit. Let's face it, and it doesn't get anywhere. And again, kind of like what Emma was saying, that shit is good because you learn from that shit and make something else. So in the story of Pingit, we actually were going to make mobile banking, but we found that we didn't have the infrastructure ready to deliver mobile banking. So we said, what else can we do? And we spun it around, and we made Europe's first person-to-person payment app, which was cool. So we did that, and at the same time we were doing that, we built all the structure. We replaced the 50-year-old servers in the background, so we could do a bit of cloud stuff, and we could have like an infrastructure that could actually talk to mobiles and wasn't all COBOL based, and so that was cool. So yes and no. Sorry.
Thanks for sitting on the fence. No, thanks very much for that. I suppose kind of next question then. I mean, I was speaking to a head of product. He unfortunately couldn't have been here, but he was saying the question he wanted to ask was, how do you innovate when you're not as big a business as, say, perhaps a Barclays? How do you innovate when the teams still have to do BAU, still have to do the day-to-day as well?
I think if any of you have watched my video, apologies, because you probably heard me say this already, but for me, innovation kind of falls into two categories. There are the kind of big ideas and the big disruptive stuff that you invent that nobody had ever thought of before. But lots of the innovation that I see in my teams actually comes from the day-to-day, and it comes from the getting to the end of a sprint and looking at what we've done and how could we have done it better, or what was painful about that, or when we took that product prototype out, what did our customers say about it, and how could we have anticipated that they would have said that sooner? And I think sometimes the innovation that comes in that space is almost more powerful, because for every, 100 big ideas that there are, you'll probably find one that's a real gem. And to find 100 big ideas and to have some crazy space for people to do their stuff, Paul, is quite an expense for a business, right? And so if you can innovate with the teams as they're working, that's a much more, in my eyes, a much more efficient way of getting that innovation. But as I said before, I think the danger there is that you kind of follow the pack and you do small tweaks on what you're doing. And I think it is good to have one idea on, or one eye on kind of what's the next big idea and how do we disrupt the market.
Excellent. I think that's one of the questions I've already seen come through in Slido, or actually, sorry. What is the best example of innovation that you've seen in the past year? I was interested in getting your thoughts on that.
Actually, it probably, sorry, just before we go on to that one, it probably is worth saying, I mean, a lot of times I think if you're in an organization that perhaps doesn't have the resources to innovate, or perhaps doesn't have the priority to innovate, there are other ways to achieve innovation. You know, we talked a little bit about culture and changing the culture to enable you to be able to make small tweaks. Even those small changes can help deliver innovation within your organization. Typically, you know, the clients that I work with, you can see anything from those small innovations through to perhaps carving out a percentage of time for a team to allow them to focus on, you know, dedicated innovation, right up to reforming a team or a number of teams in a unit to be able to deliver on innovation, which, you know, in my experience is maybe the best way of doing it, but obviously, you know, that requires the most resources and the most time and effort. So, you know, it doesn't work for everybody, but there are options. It's not a, you know, you can't do innovation or you can. It doesn't work like that, right? Exactly.
Yeah, from my point of view, it's a bit like the can you adopt agile unless you can get like a consultant to come in and spend £10 million with you. And actually, there's loads of stuff that you can just do. And actually, if you're a smaller organisation, you're less constrained, actually, and if you've got less. And I think some of this is about just checking back with yourself as an organisation or as an individual about saying, what are actually my constraints to doing something differently? What is causing me to behave the way that I'm behaving, or to set this up in the way that it's set up? You know, and that's where you can get a really innovative changes in practice, or kind of what you're doing, and that will lead to different products and services. Because actually we are all bound by self-imposed rules that we don't even realise that we're imposing on ourselves. And I think that, you know, smaller organisations and things can just check back on themselves and say, you know, why are we doing it like this? We're doing it like this because we're following a pattern from a different organisation because it's the status quo. But how about we just, you know, follow some of your idea, you know, around what if we turn this on its head, you know, and it's that freedom of thought. But yeah, small organisations, I think, are much more able to do that fail fast and to try things out. Best thing I've seen. Do you want to ask?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go back to the best thing. Yeah, so just on the.
You're just trying to buy yourself more time to think here. We can come back to that if we need.
Definitely. So just on the kind of like, so working for a big organisation is no different. So what I kind of did at Barclays, I set up a very small team building all the innovation out, and I did it very cheaply using apprentices. So I trained the apprentices up, had some developers, had some designers, and they were great because they weren't ingrained in any of the problems and the shits that Barclays had, and we just made like really cool, crazy stuff because they had no history of risk or kind of like people stealing credit card details, and we just made it. So without thinking about all the problems, we just made it. And then we can presented it, and then we gave it to somebody else to deal with those hard risk and legal problems. So, and again, I think if you're a small organisation, nothing to say that you can't write, you know, you can't go to the bar and write something down on a napkin and draw a few sketches out, pass that idea on to somebody, get some feedback, and then kind of like try and work it, you know, try and do somebody's side of the job desk. You know, if you want to pay somebody a bit of overtime, you know, it kind of like might cost like 50 quid a week. But actually, you can get a really nice product that can make you millions at the end of it.
I think risk is a really important thing, actually, because I just see so much apathy and lack of innovation because people are happy to accept the risk of what they're doing now rather than the risk of changing. And because I don't think they perceive what they're doing now as a risk. It's like, it's okay. And I'm like, no, you're carrying loads of risks. You're like doing loads of shit stuff, you know, already. But they don't, they calculate the risk of every single change. And so that leaves them in a paralysed state, whereas actually they are carrying so many risks and dangers. There's so many things not being done or not being done as well, or so many pounds missed from being in that state. And so I think the perception of risk is really important to your attitude towards innovation. Still
Excellent.
don't know the answer to the best thing about innovation.
We are coming back to it at the end of just before the food break. So yeah, have a think in the meantime. But moving on, probably one I wanted to put to you, Kath, was obviously Moneysupermarket hail from the Silicon Valley of North Wales, ULO,
Yeah.
where it's all
Centre of the earth, right?
where it's all happening. I heard. I suppose I wanted to get your take on our innovation hubs, an integral part of digital transformations.
Yeah,
Given that you guys have just moved to Manchester.
Yeah, definitely. So don't get me wrong, we've got a lot of very bright people in ULO. It's a great office. We have a great time there. However, recruiting really diverse teams and developers who want to live on the edge of North Wales is quite a hard task. And if you limit your talent pool, you then get people who stay because it's comfortable and they've been there a long time. And like I said, we're coming from Auto Trader in the city to going out to ULO, for me the difference was really stark. There was just none of the kind of evening sharing or pairing up with other companies in the local area happened. Even there's not the same density of universities, schools, things like that around the office. So for me, the kind of push to say our product engineering hub needs to be in Manchester was a really big deal. And I attend Product Tank. I do quite a lot of events like this. I've done some lunch events. I know leaders now in lots of the digital businesses. And I guess the challenge that you get is if you're in the centre of this big digital hub, are you going to lose some of your people because there's lots of other competitors there? And yes, we'll lose people, I'm sure, to Amazon when they move in, or to Bet365 or Late Rooms or whoever the company is. But equally, we'll gain some talent from them. And I'm a bit of a believer that I stayed at Auto Trader for 9 years and I worked in lots of different parts of the business, but you can stay somewhere for too long and you can go stale. And I think having that access to people who have moved in this circle, I mean, recruiting, we've just brought, in the last about 8 months, we've brought over 100 people into our Manchester office. And that's largely been done because the people that we're bringing in have a network. The community, although it's growing, it's quite tight. A lot of people know each other. They go to tester meetups or coding gatherings or Vue.js meetups or whatever it is. So we tap into meeting different people, knowing what stage of their career they're at. And whether we benefit from that because we bring those individuals into the business, or whether we benefit because we have sharing events, or we go to hackathon weekends, or we host stuff like that. I think the benefit of that is huge. And it can be the kick up the arse that you need sometimes. I think it's really easy in a business to get comfortable, and more businesses now are talking about flexible working and making it easier for you to be at home if you want 2 lots, and I think that's a great thing to do. But I think we're trying to really make sure our teams are focusing on pace and momentum, because I think that's really important in this industry, and being at the centre of a digital hub like this just makes a real difference.
Excellent. Dave, I guess Infinity Works, you guys have been growing, rapidly but organically. You weren't always in Manchester, but now have got a good hub here, of which you're part of. What are your thoughts on innovation hubs?
So, I mean, we really couldn't do it without Manchester. I mean, just to reiterate your thoughts there, I mean, from my perspective, if anyone out there is outside of the city and is potentially considering a move like that, do it now, because although it makes my life more difficult for recruiting talent, the last 3 organisations I've worked for have been based out of the city, and like you've really struggled to find talent, and I think when you look around in Manchester, there is a lot of talent. There are some great grad programs to feed talent into organisations. And proud to be one of the organisations in town who are helping take grads and bootstrap them into industry. And I guess our community is where it's at. You really can't put a price on our community. Yeah. In terms of meetups, there's a meetup every single night. The meetups are delivering serious value in this community. If you've not been in that space for a while, maybe I actually heard from somebody the other day that they were coming slightly turned off by how many meetups there are. You are spoiled for choice, but if you actually go along to them, they are still really interesting. They're still really relevant. There's still a bunch of smart people out there who are doing talks, and it's a good space to be in. And that's just the meetup space. There's some really great hackathons that are running. Weekend-long hackathons. Everything from coding to electronics. to machine learning, AI, which is where a lot of industry is moving to. There's some really clever people out there, and I guess for a lot of people, you're not talking to them yet. The fact that I'm talking to them before you is great, because honestly, I'd like to when we have the break, come and talk to me about how Infinity can help you with innovation, and I can make some introductions with some great people that I work with.
I think, particularly from my previous role with the local authority and some of the work that I did with Greater Manchester around GM and the digital work that we're doing, having those kind of hubs and that kind of market here and that critical mass means that you have the best people in the area who can provide that fresh thinking. We've got a great grad market because the universities are here. But also, I think you're absolutely right. I think that you will only get that kind of innovation, you'll get the best tech companies if you've got people moving around. Moving is not a bad thing, and part of what we're doing at BPDTS with DWP is saying, how can we create terms and conditions which are more akin to the private sector that mean that we can get some of the people that are thinking, I don't want to go into the civil service for 10 or 15 years or get stuck in the civil service for 30 years. I want to do my time at rental cars and then also trader and then go around. And actually, it's really, really hard for the public sector to maintain a kind of cutting edge awareness of different skills and technologies and ways of working if it's one job market here and another job market in the sector. And it's the same for the other companies. If you get somebody who's worked on car stuff, going to bank stuff, then this is all about lateral thinking. It's about thinking differently. It's about making connections between neurons that haven't previously been made, and solving problems that lead to great stuff. And by moving people around and people thinking, we're great machines at putting together loads of information and seeing the connections between it. Still better, pretty much, than any computer out there. Do you know what I mean? And you allow a human being to go into one situation and absorb that information, and you put them into a new situation, and that's where you get the innovation. And having a market like we've got where people move around throughout their career, things, I was saying the other day, it's like if you've got places where people can go, and it can include us at DWP, where people are going on their kind of upward spiral with their career and they come to us, but they've got all that knowledge from the other areas, we will get more innovation and creativity and a better standard of work and services and product and output because of that. So it's a great thing to have all these people around you.
Excellent. Okay then, I've got a quote for you and I'm interested to get your thoughts on it. The quote is, "Technology is the easiest part of the complex issues we will face in the coming years. That anyone can create technology, but not everyone is creating technology solutions that people want to use." So is the easiest part of technology, of innovation, making the tech?
So for anyone that didn't hear at the back, the answer was yes. It absolutely is. I mean, if you look at the technology we've got today, we're absolutely spoiled for choice, right? It's so easy to go and create something that scales massively. The problems that we used to go and solve sort of even 5 years ago just don't really exist anymore if you're able to leverage things like the cloud, if you're able to leverage good enterprise-grade systems. It's the idea, and and I guess the execution as well. I spend a lot of my time working with service designers and working in that space, and it's absolutely fascinating as an engineer at heart to watch somebody go and spend some time in that user research space and see how people think. You talked about how innovation doesn't work and why it doesn't work. And it's really great to see somebody doing user research and actually having and spending a lot of time figuring out what the right environment is to ask those questions so that you get valuable feedback. It's so important in the environment's right to be able to channel your thought to essentially leverage technology, which at the end of the day is just a tool, right?
I knew that was coming to me. I saw it. Yeah, it's just a tool. That's just what I was going to say. No, I think what you said all that time ago was absolutely right. The technology is the easy bit. We've in my previous role, we got into a situation where we had autonomous squads, lots of small autonomous squads, and they all had a goal and they were all chasing their goal and building lots of software. We had quite a few ideas that we then tried to take to market, and for whatever reason, they didn't take off in the market. And it could have been it was the wrong time we were taking them to market. It could have been they were going to market in competition with something else. It could have been they just weren't very well thought through. We were spending a huge amount of money on testing ideas in labs where we'd paid for a third-party company to come and to mediate and to cover the fact that it was our business that was asking the questions and to ask some pointed questions and see how people responded. And we started saying, actually, we need to spend more time before we get into build testing stuff really early. And so we started doing really lo-fi prototypes, and we were hanging about in Manchester offering to pay for people to have a coffee if they'd give us 10 minutes to just run through and see how they'd respond to something that didn't really have a lot of tech behind it, to be honest. It was just a couple of screens we'd put together, or in some cases it was a couple of boxes drawn on a piece of paper. And for me, that falls in the innovation category, and that's why I for a long time I had this really weird relationship with the word innovation, because I always thought innovation was for really creative people who had big ideas, and I was someone who executed, I wasn't someone who had the big idea. But for me, just something as simple as that, as saying, actually, there are these hugely expensive technological solutions, but there's also these things that you could do that don't cost you very much money and that give you really direct feedback from any Tom, Dick or Harry on the street. You've not selected them, they're not part of a specific category, but you can get their feedback, and the public don't hold back, right? Just because you bought them a coffee, they'll tell you the truth. So we got some real feedback, and that initial feedback, okay, it was quite small sources, and like I say, it wasn't necessarily picking people from lots of different areas in terms of what their background was or whatever, but it gave us a real insight really early on in the process before we'd invested a lot of money in building out the ideas. And I think that's quite important, because as we said before, if you work for a big company and they can provide labs where you can test stuff, that's great. But it can actually be quite expensive to innovate, to try out these big ideas. So anything you can do cheaply is good. I'm just out of the corner of my eye, I saw the question come up about, do you incentivize your teams to come up with innovative ideas? And it actually ties into what I was just saying. We don't, but we do have a hackathon. We have lots of hackathons within the teams, but we have a whole company hackathon once a year, and the team that wins gets a prize of some description. But really what the guys care about is more that their idea won than that they've won a 50 quid Amazon voucher. And so it was just kind of reiterating the point that you can innovate really quite cheaply.
And that's through kind of internal competition as well, so you find that's a good tool for you. Okay, makes sense.
We were just discussing it. So we were just going to say about the incentivization. I think people are pretty incentivized anyway. You know, if they've got a goal that they want to achieve, if they're an organisation that has goals and a kind of mission and a purpose that they're generally aligned to, and that they're pretty autonomous, and that so they're interested in it. You know, people are motivated by different things, but you know, from an incentive point of view, to solve the problems, to make their lives better. You know, I think people are, you know, I don't think we need this kind of extra incentives generally. People are generally in a position where they want to enjoy their work, do quite interesting things. That's just like the human brain and the human disposition is generally to do that, and techie people are particularly like that. It's about the autonomy and giving them the space to be able to do that, and removing kind of any kind of blockers or impediments in a classic kind of agile way that stop them from just being able to get on and do stuff.
So you don't just need to throw a few quid at them and then they'll start working harder.
Yeah, they'll start to be, I've got a brilliant idea now. I'm just lacking like 100 quid.
Yeah. Okay.
We actually joked.
Have you got some really good ideas if only I gave you £100?
We joked at the start of this and asked ourselves whether we'd get through the whole talk without mentioning Drive by Daniel Pink. If you're incentivizing your teams, go and read that book. Seriously.
Excellent. So I guess, you know, we live in interesting times, and this is more a question, I guess, of old versus new technologies. You know, drones are making deliveries, driverless cars are a reality, but it's not, you know, uncommon to still be using a scanner or maybe a fax machine's a bit too old now, but, you know, certainly a scanner. I guess, how do executives think about emerging technology versus old technology, and where do we find the balance? This mic's getting passed down.
Well, working in Barclays, there was shitloads of old technology. So, and it is... I still want a job.
Hate to tell you it's being filmed.
So it is tricky because there's a lot of people I work with who can someone posted yesterday, they've been with the bank 25 years. And they're kind of like, when they first went in there, photocopies weren't even invented. So it's really, digital transformation is really tricky. One thing we did internally was invent Digital Eagles, which is an amazing internal program. You've probably seen the adverts about it. And now we've extended it beyond our internal to help our customers. And I remember when I was doing our tech demos in branches, and kind of this is where I'm not taking credit for it, slightly, and this is where the idea came from. That people didn't actually know how to use their phones to use mobile banking. So we had a massive problem. We don't have an Apple Genius bar. We don't have engineers to kind of help people to use their phones. So what can we do? So we created online tutorials, online videos to help our staff educate themselves to be more digitally savvy. So it's a tricky one. It's a slow burner, but that digital transformation is key. And we now do that as an external program, and we offer Digital Eagles, or whatever you want to call them, to external companies. So there's some based in Salford City Council, and they help. And they run coding sessions for kids. They go into schools and teach about privacy and kind of things like that. And it's brilliant. And it's expanded out from a small idea. And actually there was 8 Digital Eagles doing that as part of their side of their job from banking, because they knew something new was coming up, and it's not just about handing physical cash out over a counter anymore. So that was quite nice to get involved with that. But getting rid of the photocopiers, we've still got photocopiers in the office. I think we've still got fax machines. But it's kind of like that journey is, for the bigger the organisation, the harder it is. Because you can't get rid of some of those brilliant people, because they've been there too long. I'm not saying that. But in terms, and they kind of they kind of use Word and things like that, and they kind of don't think outside the box. But actually, they bring a lot of information, a lot of skills, and a lot of knowledge to those roles that actually would be lost without those. So it's about encouraging them and giving them the passion to do it as well. And it's not just going right, we're going to scrap Word, you're going to learn something new. Just can't do it. So it's like a drip feed and helping people through.
For me, I think he's given me the answer to the innovation question, which is brilliant. It's made me think of something.
We're coming back to that, don't worry. No one's getting away with that.
I've connected dots, and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to tell them about that. But the senior management thing is that they want it, but they don't want the pain that comes with it. They don't necessarily want the pain on their watch, and I'm not always sure that people are prepared to do it within the time that they're going to be in that post. If I'm frank about it, and I don't think they're prepared for. They think that it's a quick fix, so they think that it's like put in a server and my organisation will be transformed. And actually, this is about people and culture. And no matter how much you wrap something up in a technical innovation, you have to change the people, you have to change the behaviours, you have to change whether it's the behaviours of your consumer, like you said, or whether it's the behaviours of the kind of staff that you have. And that is something that you need to really heavily invest in. So yeah, they'll say, I want you all to be agile. Be doing stand-ups, be doing this, be doing that. But actually, there was a lot more to it than that in terms of being able to invest in your kind of culture of your people, and so that people can be agile. Rather than just kind of do agile or embrace certain forms of technology. So that's the hard thing. That's the hard reality of it.
Add to that as well. I'm going to say something controversial, so turn the cameras off now. Don't do that. So as part of my job, I guess I don't get to I don't come across this problem very often. But one of the questions I do hear time and time again in different forums is how do you do digital transformation well when when you have business deadlines to achieve, or when you have significant legacy within your business that you need to maintain. You just can't let those standards slip. You know, maybe you've got SLAs, or maybe you've got some aging system that you just can't let go of. How do you manage that kind of transformation? And I've only ever really seen it done well once, and that's an experience that I had at Ticketmaster, where we installed a project management office of PMs across the business as a kind of crack team of agile specialists who had a background in delivery but also a background in agile. And up front, we had and I was part of that team, we had a finite remit and a finite amount of time to go and solve that problem with the business and to help that digital transformation. But the structure it put into the business and help support was actually really valuable. And you know, I think that's where in today's modern business, that's where a PMO really adds value. I think over time, the value of PMO has been questioned. And I won't talk too much about that. And they certainly end up. I think they end up as a kind of legacy artifact. I think the point I was trying to make was they add structure. It's for a finite amount of time, and they can certainly help with a digital transformation.
I think sometimes they end up being like an accounting kind of function, and that feels like it's not adding enough value. But actually, to do proper transformation, you need to line up what you're buying, what your architecture is, how your people are behaving, what services you're developing, what you're going to now, and how you're incrementally changing. And you know, you need to create a kind of modularity and an agility within every single one of those streams. You know, when you buy stuff, it needs to be agile. You need to not be buying for the long term. When you're looking at your architectures, they need to be decoupled. You need to be separating concerns. You need to be able to swap things out as things change. You need to be preparing for change in everything, from the way in which you train people to the way in which you're building your tech. And I think that quite often, you know, a kind of layer of I'm very much for like a principles kind of based kind of strategy that a PMO or whatever can help with, but you need to have that kind of strategy so that you're driving the right behaviours in all the different things, and that's where you'll get the kind of change.
And just to be really clear, that for me, that's not a PMO full of project managers. That's a PMO of experienced delivery managers who understand the importance of agile and lean, and they're change agents in the business, right?
Excellent, thanks very much. I was distracted as I saw the most unlikely hashtag of the night come up, which was hashtag clip art for life. Someone furious about the lack of popularity for clip art. But moving on. Earlier on this year, we at Insight published a white paper. It was a big piece of research that we undertook, which was based on the digital skills gap. If anyone got a copy of it at the time and managed to have a look at it was a great read. If I do say so myself. Also, we're more than happy to send through to anyone. So again, if anyone is interested in seeing that particular white paper, just get in touch with any of the team here tonight. They'll be more than happy to send it on to you. But one of the themes that came up from that white paper was, and it kind of links into what you were saying, Emma, a little bit, was agility over ability and the advantage of recruiting fast learners rather than just recruiting skills. And I guess with regards to innovation then, do we need someone that is able to pick things up or someone who's done it already at a different company? Discuss.
Yeah, obviously. We're in a, you know, like anybody who does a software degree now, even when my brother did his software degree, and probably when my dad did his, like 4 years ago, maybe not my dad, but certainly my brother, he was like, oh, I've been taught how to learn a new language because I'll probably have to learn a new language. And this was like 20 years ago, and it's only got more the case. And it is about being able to pick things up. What are those core skills around learning and around change, and what are those core skills around behaviours? So if you're going to innovate or you're going to work together, you need to be able to communicate, have team skills. You need to be able to be part of creating the right culture. And they're so much more important. Being able to learn skills is really important because you will need some skills. I'm not saying like employ somebody who cannot learn a skill, who is just a nice person and makes good tea or something. But I'm saying that you can, you know, those aptitudes are far, far more important. You know, and I will champion that in any recruitment drive that I am doing, because for a start, you just don't know what you're going to need in 3 years' time. You don't know what's over the next horizon. We talk about innovation and stuff. You need those kind of people that will be an asset to you, whatever the future may hold.
Yeah, so I've got first-hand experience of this. So basically, I don't give a shit what's on your CV. And kind of like when I kind of look through the CV, I kind of like, have they had experience? Have they had this? Have they got a degree in it? I don't know if I care. So I've had some people doing internships when they're on degree, and they were the worst people I've worked with because they were slow. They kind of like they work on 3-month projects at universities, and I don't want to work with people like that. I want to work with people who can turn stuff around in 30 minutes. So I recruited loads of apprentices who had zero experience in code, in design, in kind of project management, or filmmaking, things like that. And I taught them everything from scratch. And they were the best team. And probably the most celebrated team in the mobile department, because we just churned things out. And we didn't have that legacy of crap, which was good. Yeah, so I kind of like, if people have said, oh, I've got this experience, it doesn't matter. Can you do it? Can you change? Can you adapt? I think that's the big keys now.
I'm hearing that so much about apprentices at the moment. I'm hearing loads of people talking about graduates or kind of like 3-4 year hires or whatever, and they're saying, oh, I'd just rather have an apprentice because they're just really up for it. You know what I mean? And so that just shows you, it's they haven't got the skills, but they've got the drive, they've got the energy, they've got the enthusiasm.
Of course. Kath, I guess you've, I'm sure, helped to hire, a good portion of this 100 plus in the Manchester office. What are you looking for?
Yeah, so we, excuse me, have typically kind of 3 stages to our interview. So if it's a technical role, we tend to do a technical testing stage. And so initially we'll have a kind of screening call with them. And then we bring them in, we do a technical test, and they spend some time having a technical interview. And then we do what we call a cultural fit interview at the end. And I echo what the guys are saying here, that's really important for us now. We were talking earlier about how there are still some people in our teams who are very set in this is my role and these are the boundaries and I won't step outside of those boundaries. It just doesn't work in our world anymore. So we need to know that people coming in aren't going to be in that situation. They aren't going to limit themselves to, I'll only do this and my role stops here. We need people who want to be part of a team, who want to understand what the value is in what they're trying to do or what the problem is they're trying to solve. And then when they set themselves that goal as a team, they go at it as a team. And that's been really important for us. There's a few people that we have found who've been technically brilliant but haven't been the right cultural fit, and we haven't offered to them. And that was quite hard in the beginning when we were struggling to recruit. It was difficult to find someone who was technically brilliant and to say no. But I think in the longer term, it's the right decision.
I guess it's all about succession planning, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, then, quick question and one-word answer, please. What is the optimal number for a product team to be able to innovate? How many people do you need in your product teams to be able to innovate?
That's a difficult question, right? It depends what kind of innovation you're trying to do.
Stop trying to requirements gather. How many people in your team to make a top-class agile product team?
How about none?
Ooh. Interesting. Talk to me. Why?
Why do you need to offload product responsibility to an individual? Why can't it be a team? If the team are capable of actually building the service and understand the mission, the vision, and they get where they're going, they can master the technology, why do they need product? Now, I'm not saying I believe that.
I ain't here to answer the questions.
But a question to the group.
Well, I don't know whether you mean like a product team or whether you mean a dev team. But,
well, essentially...
Yeah.
Well,
so
there you go.
So just give us the devs. I reckon probably I'll go 5.
5 from Emma. Any advances?
3 to 7.
It's like how many product managers do you need to change a light bulb? It varies, right?
So our squads are between 10 and 12 people, ranging from product owners, right through to devs, testers, architects, DevOps. So, and I think innovation happens in those product teams because they're aligned to the product and they know what they're trying to achieve. Similarly, I've worked in other organisations where they have innovation hub teams, which are more bunch of creative people doing the wacky out there, how do we get ahead of the game, disruptive stuff. And they're typically less people, more space, lots of beanbags, lots of blue sky, all that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's kind of why I go back to, it depends what it is, what your innovation looks like.
So I suppose my question fell pretty flat. Is what I'm taking away from this. So I'm going to move on. The age-old question: does size matter? If a creative There's two questions. If a creative invention solves a key organisational challenge, then it's innovation regardless of how big or small it is. Thoughts? So does size matter in terms of innovation? If it's a small idea, are we blue sky thinking? What's your take? What would you prefer?
I don't think size matters. I've known some brilliant individuals who. That was a Freudian slip. No, in terms of innovation, I don't think size matters. You're making me blush. I do not blush.
It's really hot in here, right?
Very hot.
Do you want us to leave?
Yeah, in terms of innovation, I don't think size matters. You can have brilliant individuals who come up with great ideas. Equally, you can have huge teams that ideas come out of. So I don't think there's one rule. You can say something inappropriate now.
Silence.
I don't think it matters. I think so long as I was trying to think about what's innovation, but I mean anything that makes you go, oh no, that's cool. That's a relief. It's almost a weight off your shoulders, isn't it? When you've solved a problem, and that could be a small problem where you're like, oh no, that's innovative. Oh, that's cool. You know, or a big problem where you go, fucking hell, this is going to change things. We've caught on to something here. Both of those are innovation, but anything that just lights you up, doesn't it? You know, that's almost like the definition of it. It's like we're making progress here. So, any size of progress. Nothing to do with size.
How do you know if it's innovation for the sake of innovation? Like sometimes innovation is too much innovation, right? That didn't go down well. Oh dear. It's someone Instagram the screen.
Yeah, let's go back to the hashtag clip art. Right, we're going to move on from
Moderator.
that question and the aubergines. So, with regards to technology then, Dave, one thing I wanted to understand from you, I guess what have been some of the biggest technology enablers you've seen over your career that have just transformed the industry?
So I guess apologies for anyone that watched my interview video. I talked a little bit about cloud and serverless. Serverless is an obvious choice because it's made such an impact in the cloud world. You know, everyone says cloud is just someone else's computing. Personally, I kind of don't see it like that at all. I interviewed a chap last week who came to us, and he did a pair programming session with me, and he showed me how awesome he was at C. And I last did C when I was a lot younger in university. And I asked him to complete a very simple challenge. And that's loading a text file, filtering or sorting that text file and outputting it to the console. You know, really simple stuff. And he spent a long time figuring out why he was running out of memory loading that text file. Seriously. So I'm looking at this guy, I'm thinking, you're probably the brightest guy I've interviewed in the last year, and you're solving problems that nobody's cared about for decades. And I was so sad. And that's the great part about my job, is I get to roll into projects with some great teams, and we figure out how to solve really complicated problems with technology. From the cloud perspective, that enables me to do that quite simply, and I almost feel like a fraud occasionally. You know, I'll roll in, I'll recommend a bunch of services because it's just going to make my life easier. And then I spend a whole stack of time figuring out, you know, how do we scale those services as a business and that sort of thing. But from a cloud perspective, you know, serverless is the next thing. It seems to be what we're all talking about in the community at the moment. It enables us to build services very, very quickly with minimal infrastructure. So, you know, a few years ago, I'd spend a lot of time with infrastructure teams, begging them to let me touch their boxes, their firewalls, and all that junk. And
We all heard that.
Well done. Into the room.
Let's see what turns up on the screen. But I guess for anyone in technology, you know the pain that I'm talking about. And today, to be able to rock up and within a sprint, stand up a working prototype. So to go from lo-fi, user research, user flows, flow diagrams, that sort of thing, right up to some sort of working prototype is just incredible. It's phenomenal how quickly we can do that now.
I definitely echo that around touching people's boxes. No, the idea that we can move kind of user research from a...
I don't know, sorry to interject. I don't know who said that I have sent the message in. I was right here. It's being filmed. As you were saying?
I'm gonna wet myself. Oh my God, hilarious. The idea that we can move from trying to do things in the abstract, ask people about their behaviours, then we move towards user research where we're trying to observe their behaviours with lo-fi stuff. The idea that we can rapidly do MVPs that are almost real and then we can iterate on them, that we can have real metrics and stuff like that is just fantastic. The other real innovation and where there's real potential, I think, is in the DevOps environment. So I've seen loads of people think that they're doing loads of really cool, innovative stuff in the development space, not thinking at all about what it is actually like around the shit experience within the kind of service management space. And I know it's totally unsexy, and I know it's not what loads of people want to talk about. They want to talk about boxes and aubergines and stuff like that. But the real sex happens in service management. But yeah, I think it's just really important to understand how that works, and I think we'll see over the next few years a real integration of those two things. I just don't understand why they're so separate and why we allow kind of great stuff to be chucked out, or stuff to be chucked out with loads of tech debt, or really cruddy user experience like you talked about before, and then to be dealt with through problem management and incident management. And I think there's also the combining and more innovative things around thinking about how we create that better feedback loop between training and cultural change and the digital stuff we're putting in. But the innovation thing that you reminded me of before was about how we did some stuff, and we won an award last year with Stockport, which was around kind of agile transformation and putting that into social care. And we gave them the tools so that they could more rapidly do all sorts of things in terms of agile ways of working and shorter feedback loops and getting loads of stuff done through really, really hard times. But actually, they taught us loads around service design, and that really, really affected. So one of the most innovative things was that we took some of their stuff around something called restorative practice, which is around changing the relationship between them and the families that they were trying to intervene with, and thinking, actually, as a nanny state, have I been creating helplessness in these families? And we were like, oh my God, how in our design patterns are we actually creating helplessness? And your thing around assisted digital and technology and stuff, to what extent are we creating it so that people need to come back to us in our design patterns and in the way that we're training people? And actually one of the things that was a eureka moment for us was, are we being restorative in the way in which we design things? Are we teaching people how to use this technology and how to interact differently?
Excellent. Look, I'm conscious that I think pizzas are pretty much on the way, if not here already. So just kind of wrapping up then. So going back to the question that no one wanted to... Well, there's been many questions that people didn't want to answer over the first hour. But the best innovation you've seen over the last 12 months?
So I'd probably say the best innovation I've seen over the last 12 months is how AI has been used in Alder Hey Hospital to diagnose people without going through any doctors or processes. So that eliminates kind of like a lot of waiting, a lot of hanging around time, and actually giving healthcare to people who need it there and then, and filtering through kind of like somebody's got their hand stuck in a jar. So or a box for Dave.
Is your hand stuck in a box? Permanently. So for me, it's some of the stuff that I'm seeing around smart homes for older people, and it's an innovative use of really simple technology a lot of the time, electricity meters, kind of burglar alarm sensors and stuff like that, done with really, really nice kind of front ends and kind of simple kind of algorithms to understand the data and understand deviance from that data, and I think it's really helped. We're on the cusp of moving to smart homes that will help people who've got families in remote kind of that are remote from them, be able to understand kind of, is there a change in behaviour? Are they still getting up at the same time? Are they turning the kettle on? Are they going out of the house at night and stuff like that? And I see a lot of worry and concern about elderly relatives and stuff like that. And I think if we can just use that really simple technology to help them, I think that's an amazing innovation.
Excellent.
There's loads of really exciting innovation going on in our business, which is probably the stuff I'm most excited about in the last 2 months, but it's not stuff I can share right now. I think for me, I've said a few times, I'm more wowed by like the small things. I get really excited when Spotify recommends that I'll like a particular artist or a particular playlist because it's learned from what I've listened to before. I love it when Monzo tells me how much I spent when I was drunk in Benidorm with the girls. I like it when my apps tell me you could get what you've just paid for a lot cheaper if you went somewhere else for it. So I like getting off the plane in freezing England and knowing I can turn my heating on or put the lights on at home or whatever it is I want to do from my phone. So for me, there's lots of hugely wild, big ideas out there, but it's the little stuff that makes me go, oh yeah, I'm going to be loyal to that brand because I love what they've done there. That's the stuff that makes me tick.
So I'm kind of in the same boat. A lot of the work that I do, I can't actually talk about, which is really awkward. But I guess from my perspective, I'd like to put a challenge out to you. If anyone is working in the public space or the transport space, if you're not on my list of what's hot in innovation, you probably should be. And I really hope you are. So I'm going to offer you a challenge. Be on my list for next year. Because first of all, this is a bit of a rant, I'll warn you now. I'd really like the trains to run on time in the Northwest. If anyone is in that space, please innovate and fix it. And if you're in public services, if you're anywhere near kind of the NHS in that space, and they are one of our clients, we do a lot of work with them. If you're in that space, please do as much as possible. They need our help, really.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, guys. We're going to take a break now. Guys, get some more drinks tokens. We've got some pizza here, just on the tables at the back. Get involved, and we'll catch back up in 20 minutes for an audience Q&A that I'm definitely excited for.